Welcome back to the deep dive. So we're looking at a very specific, honestly pretty fascinating stack of research today.
Yeah, it's really eye-opening.
It was sent in by you, our favorite learner. And, usually when we think about math, there's this comforting expectation of absolute precision.
Right, like it's a closed system.
Exactly. You put $10 in your pocket, you take 5 out, you have 5 left. It's predictable. But today, we are unpacking a stack of sources that takes that basic arithmetic and just turns it completely on its head.
It really does. We're diving deep into the materials of James Stuart.
Right. He's a pension and retirement specialist.
Yes. And he's laid out this financial framework that basically argues our standard understanding of risk and reward is just fundamentally broken.
Which is a bold claim.
It is, but
Yeah.
it's a genuinely paradigm-shifting set of documents. According to his framework, the default settings we rely on for retirement savings aren't just, slightly inefficient.
They're actually flawed.
Massive, unacknowledged structural flaws. His material suggests that by changing the legal architecture of where your money sits, you can literally rewrite the rules of compounding interest.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because the central claim here is this piece of mathematical proof that, honestly, it sounds like a typo the first time you read it.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right. According to the data provided, if you take a single one-time $10,000 sum and leave it in the traditional stock market over a specific 25-year period, it grows to roughly $47,000.
Which sounds like a solid win.
It does. But then the materials outline this alternative and index strategy. And that exact same $10,000 over the exact same time frame grows to an astonishing $63,000.
Yeah, that's a huge difference.
And here is the kicker. It achieves that higher number while experiencing exactly 0 years of market loss.
Which goes against every single instinct we've been taught about the risk-reward trade-off.
Completely. Taking less risk, sitting out the massive boom years, and somehow mathematically arriving at a significantly larger pile of cash.
Yeah, it sounds impossible. But to really grasp how that $63,000 outcome is structurally possible, we first have to frame the conversation around the architecture of retirement itself.
Right, we have to look at the foundation.
Exactly. Stewart's presentation argues that before we can look at his proposed solution, we have to deeply understand the problem. And that problem is identified as the income gap.
So if my traditional retirement plan leaves a gaping hole in my financial wall, how have we historically been told to build that wall in the first place?
Well, let's look at what we're told to do. Most people assume that if you just show up, do your job for 30 years, and pay your taxes, the system has you covered.
The default American dream.
Right. But that assumption is exactly where the trouble begins. Let's analyze the first 2 pillars of retirement as outlined in the sources. Pillar 1 is Social Security. The materials point out that for the vast majority of the workforce, Social Security is initiated between the ages of 62 and 65.
And a lot of people try to hit that 65 mark specifically, right?
Yes, very often they purposefully delay or time their retirement to hit 65 specifically so it coincides with Medicare kicking in.
Because private health care before 65 is just astronomically expensive.
Exactly. The sheer cost of private health care out of pocket before age 65 would consume their entire benefit.
Which means your timeline isn't even truly your own. You were just tethered to the Medicare age just to survive the medical premiums.
Yeah, it dictates your life. And then we move to pillar 2, which is your pension.
Assuming you even have one.
Right. Not everyone has a pension anymore, but for those who do, like state employees, teachers, municipal workers' pensions operate on a rigid, mathematically predictable formula.
How does that formula actually work?
Well, the standard calculation looks at your total years of service, multiplies that by your average salary over your highest earning years, and then multiplies that figure by a pension factor.
And what's that factor usually?
It's usually hovering around 2%.
Okay, let's run a hypothetical to visualize this mechanism. Say you're a public school teacher. You grind it out, putting in 30 solid years of service.
Okay, 30 years.
And let's say your average salary over those peak earning years lands at exactly $100,000 a year.
All right, so following the formula, you take 30 years of service, multiply by $100,000, and multiply by that 2% factor.
Which comes out to what?
That puts your maximum pension income right around $60,000.
Okay.
But often, with survivor benefit reductions and other deductions, you're looking at roughly $50,000 to $55,000 a year in actual take-home.
I want to pause right there because the psychological impact of that math is just staggering.
Mm-hmm.
You were making 100 grand, living a 100 grand lifestyle,
Yeah, you built your whole life around that number.
and you retire, and overnight, you are making 50. It's a 50% pay cut on day one of your golden years.
It is. And this is the harsh reality that catches so many people entirely off guard, according to the research provided.
I mean, how could it not?
When you combine Pillar 1 Social Security and Pillar 2, your pension steward's data shows they typically only replace about 60 to 65% of a person's working income.
Wow. It's like building a beautifully sturdy house, putting on a great roof, installing the windows.
But leaving an entire wall completely missing in your living room.
Exactly. You feel like you're indoors, you feel accomplished, but the second a storm hits, you are totally exposed to the elements. I mean, think about that. Would it be a problem for you, the learner listening right now, to wake up tomorrow morning and suddenly have to navigate your life on 40% less income?
For almost everyone, the answer is an immediate and terrifying yes.
Definitely.
Because there's this common myth that your expenses drop drastically in retirement.
Right. People think, oh, my commute is gone.
Exactly. While your commuting costs might vanish and maybe your mortgage is paid off, the macroeconomic realities do not care that you retired.
Nope. The tax man still comes.
Your property taxes are not going down. In fact, historically, they rise. Your out-of-pocket healthcare costs are almost guaranteed to increase as you age.
And you want to actually enjoy your life.
Yes. Your desire to travel, to spoil your grandchildren, to actually consume the free time you just worked 3 decades to earn all of that requires capital.
You don't want to finally have the time to live, only to realize you lack the funding to do anything but sit on a couch and watch the paint peel.
Exactly. So that missing 35 to 40%, that is what the materials call the retirement income gap.
That's the missing wall.
That's the missing wall. And to fill it, to brick up that hole, most people instinctively turn to the third pillar.
But the sources reveal that this third pillar comes with a massive and often entirely overlooked silent partner.
The Internal Revenue Service.
Yep. Let's talk about what the sources call the default trap. Pillar 3.
Right. So Pillar 3 consists of defined contribution plans. This is the alphabet soup of the modern retirement system.
Right, we're talking about your 401ks.
Your 401ks, your 403bs for teachers and nonprofits, your 457 plans for state and local government employees, traditional IRAs, SEFF.
All the standard acronyms.
Exactly. And to really dissect why relying solely on these accounts to fill your income gap is structurally dangerous, Stuart provides a framework called the 3 ways money is taxed.
This framework is a brilliant lens to view your net worth through. It forces you to categorize every single dollar you save into 3 distinct tax buckets rather than just looking at one big lump sum.
It really clarifies things. The first bucket in this framework is categorized as taxed now.
Okay, what goes in there?
This encompasses your highly liquid assets, everyday savings accounts, checking accounts, certificates of deposit, money market accounts, and your standard non-retirement brokerage accounts holding stocks or mutual funds.
Now, to be clear, the materials aren't saying tax now. Money is inherently evil. You absolutely need this bucket.
Oh, without a doubt.
If the transmission blows out on your car, or your roof springs a leak, you need immediate liquidity. You need an emergency fund that you can access on a Tuesday afternoon without calling a broker.
Liquidity is its primary virtue, but its fatal flaw is that it's absolutely terrible for long-term wealth accumulation.
Yeah, because of the taxes.
Right. The mechanism dragging it down is the constant annual taxation of gains. Every single year, your CD earns a bit of interest, or your mutual fund manager sells a stock and triggers a capital gain, you receive a 1099 form in the mail.
And you have to pay up.
You must pay taxes on that growth right now in the present year. That constant slicing off the top drastically stunts the compounding power of that money over a 20 to 30-year timeline.
It's like trying to roll a snowball down a hill, but someone is shaving a layer of ice off it every 10 feet.
That's a great way to put it. And because people realize that tax drag is killing their compounding, the financial industry ushers you into the second bucket.
Right, taxed later, also known as tax deferred. This is the realm of Pillar 3, the 401ks and the 403bs.
The mechanics of the taxed later bucket are incredibly appealing on the surface. There are 2 massive psychological incentives to participate.
The first being the match, right?
Yes. First is the employer match. If your company offers a 3 or 4% match, that is literally free capital. From a purely mathematical standpoint, you should always capture the match.
You'd be crazy not to.
Exactly. The second incentive is the immediate tax deduction. You contribute pre-tax dollars, which artificially lowers your taxable income for the current year, and then that money gets to grow inside the account without the annual tax drag we saw in the first bucket.
But the sources highlight a massive illusion here. You are not avoiding the tax. You haven't outsmarted the IRS.
Not at all.
You are simply kicking the tax can down the road. And when you finally reach the end of that road in retirement, the IRS is waiting there to collect.
And they collect on entirely their own terms.
Yeah, that's the scary part.
All the money you pull out of those tax later plans is taxed at ordinary income tax rates, not the historically lower capital gains rates that apply to long-term investments.
Nope.
It's the standard, heavier income tax rates of whatever bracket you happen to fall into in the future.
Here's where it gets really interesting, and where I have to push back on the standard financial advice we all hear.
Okay, what's that?
A huge portion of the workforce, especially the state employees, municipal workers, and teachers, utilizing 403(b) plans, they don't even receive an employer match.
Right, that's a huge point.
So they are willfully locking their money away behind a bureaucratic wall, giving up all their liquidity, without even getting the benefit of free money from a corporation.
They're just taking on the restrictions for the tax deferral.
Exactly. And on top of that, let's look at the macroeconomic environment the sources hint at. Look at the national debt. Look at the unfunded liabilities of Medicare and Social Security.
It's massive.
Basic economic gravity suggests that to service that debt, future tax rates are almost inevitably going to have to rise.
It's a mathematical certainty that revenue must eventually align with expenditures. If tax rates go up, the tax later bucket becomes a trap.
I always think of it this way. Putting all your wealth into a tax later account is like taking out a 30-year mortgage. But you sign a contract allowing the bank to unilaterally decide what your interest rate is going to be on the very last day of the loan.
That's terrifying.
Why would you ever agree to that? You have zero control over what the IRS is going to demand when you're 70 years old. They could take 20%, they could take 40%.
And beyond just dictating the future tax rate, the IRS also dictates the strict operational rules of the account.
Right, they lock it down.
Stuart's presentation highlights the severe penalties built into Pillar 3 plans. For instance, the 59.5 rule.
Oh, right.
If a life event forces you to access that capital before you're 59.5 years old, the IRS levies a 10% early withdrawal penalty, and that is on top of paying the ordinary income taxes on the distribution.
It is your money that you earned, that you saved, and you are being actively penalized for needing it.
Exactly. And the control mechanisms get even tighter on the back end of your life.
Oh, yeah, the RMDs.
Right. At age 73, the IRS implements what are called required minimum distributions, or RMDs. By law, they force you to start liquidating and withdrawing a specific mathematically calculated percentage of your account every single year.
Regardless of whether you actually need the income to live on or not.
Because they've waited 40 years for their cut, and they want their tax revenue before you die.
It's just wild.
And the enforcement mechanism for RMDs is brutal. If you miscalculate the formula, or if you simply forget to file the paperwork to take the distribution in your mid-70s...
Which happens all the time.
It does. And the penalty is a staggering 25% of the amount you were supposed to withdraw, plus the income taxes you still owe on it.
A 25% penalty. That is basically bureaucratic extortion.
It's incredibly harsh.
You save diligently your entire adult life, you miss one piece of confusing paperwork when you're 75, and the government just confiscates a quarter of your required distribution as punishment. So, if we look at the board, the tax now bucket stunts our growth with yearly tax drag, and the tax later bucket invites the IRS to take a completely unknown, potentially massive cut of our future, enforced by draconian penalties.
So, we need another option.
Right. The sources argue we desperately need a better structural mechanism to fill that 35 to 40% income gap.
Which leads us directly into the third tax category and the absolute core of James Stuart's strategy.
Tax advantage bucket.
Exactly. Now, when the financially savvy hear tax advantage, their brains usually jump to a couple of standard off-the-shelf options.
Right. We hear about these all the time.
But the materials go out of their way to explain why the typical choices in this category fail to serve as a silver bullet for the average earner. Let's analyze the first common option. Municipal bonds.
Okay. Munis.
Munis are debt securities issued by states, cities, or counties to fund public projects. The interest they pay is generally exempt from federal income taxes, which sounds perfect.
Sounds great on paper.
However, The mechanical reality of municipal bonds is that their yields are incredibly low. The materials point out that to generate any meaningful income, you need massive upfront capital.
How massive are we talking?
You might need to drop $40,000 to $50,000 into a bond just to earn a meager 1% to 2% in tax-free interest.
Wow.
That volume of capital for such a low yield is not going to close a 40% retirement gap for someone who doesn't already have millions in the bank.
It's essentially a parking lot for the ultra-wealthy to shield excess cash, not a growth engine for the middle class.
Exactly.
So what about the second option? Everyone in the personal finance space preaches the gospel of the Roth IRA.
And the Roth IRA is undeniably an excellent financial tool. The mechanics are the inverse of a 401k. You put after-tax money in, meaning you pay the tax up front, but then the money grows completely tax-free, and you pull it out tax-free in retirement.
So the IRS is removed from the back end.
Yes.
So why doesn't Stuart just recommend we all go all in on Roth IRAs to fill the gap?
Because of the legislative guardrails. Congress knows how powerful tax-free growth is, so they strictly limit your access to it.
Right. They cap how much you can put in.
First, there are hard contribution limits. For the year 2026, the law dictates you can only contribute a maximum of $7,500 a year or $8,600 if you take advantage of the catch-up contribution for being 50 or older.
Which is nice.
But while saving that much tax-free is great, it simply might not provide enough volume or velocity to build the massive bridge required to cover a $50,000 annual income gap.
And if you're highly successful, the government actively blocks you from using it.
That's the second guardrail, income limits. If your modified adjusted gross income exceeds a certain threshold, the IRS simply forbids you from contributing directly to a Roth IRA.
It's crazy.
Furthermore, the Roth still carries distribution rules. You generally have to wait until you're 59 and a half, and the account must have been open for at least 5 years. Otherwise, you face that familiar 10% penalty on the earnings.
So we are stuck. Munis require too much liquid cash for too little return. Roth IRAs won't let us put enough volume in to solve the problem, and they still restrict access.
Right.
So what is the actual solution presented in the sources?
The solution, what Stuart frames as Pillar 4, is an index strategy that is legally structured specifically under IRS codes 7702, 101A, and 72E.
Okay, those are incredibly dense sections of the tax code. We need to translate that. What is Code 7702 and why does it exist?
To understand Code 7702, we really have to look at a bit of history.
Okay, take me back.
In the early 1980s, financial institutions realized that life insurance contracts had incredible tax advantages. Specifically, the internal cash value grew tax-deferred, and the death benefit paid out tax-free.
Which is a huge perk.
Huge! So investment firms started creating products that were essentially massive, high-yield investment accounts with just a tiny sliver of life insurance attached just to qualify for the tax exemption.
Oh, so they were exploiting a loophole.
Exactly. Congress realized they were losing billions in tax revenue to these disguised investments. So in 1984, they passed the Deficit Reduction Act and created IRS Code 7702.
So 7702 was actually a crackdown by Congress.
Exactly. Code 7702 officially defined, for the first time, what legally constitutes a life insurance contract for federal tax purposes.
Yeah, how do they define it?
It created strict mathematical tests, the cash value accumulation test and the guideline premium test. If a policy passes these tests, the IRS agrees to treat it as life insurance, granting it the massive tax advantages.
If it fails?
If it fails, it's taxed as a regular investment.
So Stuart is taking this highly regulated congressional definition of life insurance and using it as a legal chassis.
Yes.
I love the visual you get from the materials here. It's like opening up a massive tax sheltering umbrella over your savings. Because once your money is under that 7702 umbrella, the standard rules of retirement accounts completely evaporate.
The structural advantages are immense. Under 7702, your contribution limit is not based on an arbitrary congressional number like the Roth limit.
Right.
It is determined mathematically by the face amount of the life insurance death benefit you qualify for. Furthermore, the distributions, how and when you access your cash, are not dictated by your biological age.
So no 59.5 rule.
No 59.5 rule. You have access based purely on the accumulated cash value inside the policy.
But the sources are very careful to distinguish between the types of insurance you can put under this umbrella. We are not talking about the policy your grandfather bought in 1950.
No, definitely not.
Let's break down the 3 distinct options within this space because they perform drastically differently.
The first option under the umbrella is whole life. This is the traditional legacy product. The mechanics are very conservative.
Okay, how does it work?
The insurance company takes your premiums, invests them primarily in highly rated corporate and government bonds, and pays you a fixed, guaranteed interest rate, often augmented by a dividend, historically resulting in a net growth of maybe 2 to 4%.
It's incredibly safe. The line on the graph never goes down.
Right.
But a 3% return is barely keeping its head above the rising tide of inflation. It's not going to build the aggressive wealth needed to close a 40% income gap.
Which led the industry to create the second option, variable universal life, or VUL.
Okay.
This product swings the pendulum to the absolute opposite extreme. In a VUL, your cash value is actually directly invested in the stock market via sub-accounts, which are essentially mutual funds.
Oh, wow.
This means you capture the full, unlimited upside of the market. If the S&P 500 goes up 25%, your sub-accounts ride that wave.
But the sword cuts both ways. Because you are directly exposed to the market, you capture all the downside too.
Exactly.
If the market drops 38% like it did in 2008, your cash value is decimated. And inside an insurance policy, where internal costs are deducted monthly, a massive market loss can cause the policy to spiral and collapse.
That structural vulnerability of VULs is exactly what led to the creation of the third option, which is the core of Stuart's strategy, Indexed Universal Life, or IUL.
This is the sweet spot.
It is designed as the perfect middle ground. The interest credited to your cash value is mathematically linked to the performance of a market index like the S&P 500 without your money ever actually being invested in the market.
I need to push back here because this is where people get confused and skeptical.
Sure.
The materials say link to the S&P 500. But linking my life savings to the stock market sounds terrifying. We all remember the dot-com bust. We all remember the 2008 financial crisis. How does an index strategy actually survive when the market goes into a total freefall?
This brings us to the absolute centerpiece of the source materials, the mathematical proof.
Yes, the proof.
Stuart's data analyzes a highly specific, notoriously volatile 25-year period in the stock market from 1999 to 2025.
If you are a learner who loves data, this graph is the holy grail. We are going to meticulously paint this picture for you. The scenario tracks a single, hypothetical $10,000 investment.
Right.
There are no monthly contributions, no dollar cost averaging, just 10 grand dropped into an account in 1999 and left alone for a quarter century.
The graph tracks 3 different financial vehicles, represented by 3 distinct lines. Let's establish the baseline with the most conservative path, the fixed strategy.
Right.
On the graph, this is a red line. The mechanics here assume a steady, unwavering, guaranteed return of 3.75% every single year, regardless of what the global economy is doing.
Visually, it is just a slow, boring, straight, diagonal line marching upward.
Yep.
Over 25 years, that initial $10,000 grows to $26,000. Now, you didn't lose a dime of your principal, which feels safe, but the hidden assassin here is inflation.
Always is.
Over 25 years, the cost of housing, food, and healthcare has skyrocketed. That 26 grand in 2025 buys significantly less than the 10 grand bought in 1999. It's the illusion of safety while slowly bleeding purchasing power.
Because people recognize that inflation threat, they are funneled into the second path, represented by the purple line, the market strategy.
This is what most of us do.
This represents the traditional 401k or brokerage route, where your 10 grand is directly invested in the S&P 500 index. And the trajectory of this purple line is violently chaotic.
It truly is a psychological roller coaster. Let's walk through the history. We start in 1999, the height of the tech boom.
Everyone's making money.
Everyone thinks they are a genius. But then, the calendar flips to 2000, and the dot-com bubble bursts. We hit 3 consecutive years, 2000, 2001, and 2002, of brutal double-digit negative returns.
It was awful.
The purple line plunges off a cliff. Your 10 grand is severely impaired right out of the gate.
And the math of recovering from a loss is unforgiving. If you lose 50% of your money, you don't need a 50% gain to get back to even. You need a 100% gain.
Just to get back to zero.
Exactly. It takes the purple line years of agonizing slow growth just to claw its way back to the original baseline. It finally fully recovers and reaches a new high around 2007.
And we all know what happens next, 2008.
The great financial crisis.
The housing market collapses, banks fail, and the S&P 500 drops nearly 38.5% in a single year.
Devastating.
The purple line plummets into the abyss again. Imagine being a 62-year-old worker in 2008, planning to retire in 2009. You watch a third of your life savings evaporate in 6 months. Your retirement date isn't just delayed, it is canceled.
The sequence of returns risk is catastrophic.
Yeah.
The market does eventually recover, embarking on the historic bull run of the 2010s, but then it gets hit again by the COVID crash in 2020 and the inflation-driven tech wreck of 2022, where the market dropped over 19%.
It just keeps happening.
By the time we reach 2024 and 2025, after 25 years of stomach-churning volatility, that initial $10,000 eventually lands at roughly $47,000.
Now, $47,000 is substantially better than the $26,000 from the fixed strategy. The market did its job over the long term.
Yes, it did.
But the emotional toll, the sheer panic of watching your net worth get cut in half twice in 1 decade, is something spreadsheets can't quantify. Now let's look at the third path, the green line, the index strategy.
The green line operates under the structural mechanics of codes 7702 and indexing. It is governed by 2 uncompromising mathematical rules, a 12% cap and a 0% floor, with a 100% participation rate up to that cap.
Let's translate those mechanics. A 12% cap means your upside is legally restricted.
Right.
If the S&P 500 goes on an absolute tear and finishes the year up 25%, you not get 25%.
Right.
Your account credits a maximum of 12%.
But that ceiling is the architectural trade-off required to purchase the floor. The 0% floor is the magic of the strategy. If the S&P 500 has a negative year, whether it's a mild 5% correction or a catastrophic 38.5% crash like 2008, your account credits exactly 0%.
So you don't lose anything.
You do not gain anything, but fundamentally you lose absolutely nothing.
Visually, the green line becomes a horizontal stair step during the bad years. In 2000, 2001, and 2002, while the traditional market investor is losing their shirt, the indexed investor's account simply flatlines.
It just pauses.
In 2008, while the purple line dives into the abyss, the green line just peacefully moves sideways. But here is my pushback.
Go ahead.
If I am capping my gains at 12%, I am missing out on some massive market years. In 2013, the S&P was up almost 30%. I'm leaving 18% on the table. How can this possibly beat the market?
Because of the profound mathematical power of the 0% floor. This is where Stuart's proof is so compelling.
Okay, walk me through it.
When the market crashes, the traditional 401k investor falls into a deep hole. When the market rebounds the following year, the traditional investor's massive gains are entirely consumed just digging themselves out of that hole.
That makes sense.
But the index strategy investor, because they never lost ground, their 12% capped gain the following year is compounding on top of their previous high watermark.
I want to use an analogy here to make this crystalline. Imagine 2 rock climbers scaling a massive cliff.
Okay, I like this.
The first climber is the traditional 401k investor. They climb fast, but they have no safety gear. They scramble up 50 feet, but then they slip. They fall 40 feet down the cliff face.
Ouch.
They are bloodied, exhausted, and now they have to spend the next 2 hours reclimbing the exact same rock just to get back to where they fell from.
And the second climber?
The second climber is the index strategy under code 7702. They climb a bit slower because they're wearing a heavy safety harness. That's the 12% cap.
Right.
But every time they slip, a mechanism locks, and the harness catches them exactly where they are. They just hang there in the air, perfectly safe, resting.
They don't lose any altitude.
Exactly. When they start climbing again, every single inch of upward progress is new altitude. They reach the summit way faster, with a fraction of the anxiety, simply because they never had to reclimb lost ground.
The math in the presentation validates your analogy perfectly, because the index strategy completely avoided the catastrophic destruction of capital in the dot-com bust, in the 2008 financial crisis, and in the 2022 correction, its compounding engine was never broken.
Wow.
By 2025, that green line reaches an astonishing $63,000.
$63,000 versus $47,000. By taking less risk, by accepting a ceiling, you mathematically generated more total wealth.
It's incredible.
And here is the question every learner is asking right now.
How?
How does the insurance company afford to give you the upside of the market while eating all the losses? It sounds like magic.
It isn't magic. It is highly regulated institutional hedging.
Hedging, okay.
When you pay your premium into an IUL, the insurance company doesn't put your money into the stock market. They take roughly 95% of your money and invest it in their general account, which is comprised of extremely safe, high-grade corporate and government bonds.
Okay, so it's super conservative.
Yes. The yield from those bonds is what guarantees your principal and provides the 0% floor.
Okay, so the principal is safe in bonds. Where does the 12% market growth come from?
The insurance company takes the remaining 5% of your premium, plus the interest generated by the bond portfolio, and uses it to purchase call options on the S&P 500 index.
Those options.
Right. A call option is a financial derivative that gives them the right to capture the upside of the index. If the market goes up, those options print money, which they credit to your account up to that 12% cap.
And if the market crashes?
If the market crashes, the options simply expire worthless. The insurance company loses the small amount they spent on the options, but your underlying principal, resting safely in the bond portfolio, is entirely untouched.
That is brilliant engineering. They use the boring, stable yield of bonds to buy the high-octane upside of options, passing the profit to you while insulating you from the crash. Okay, so the money grows beautifully, and it grows safely, but life is chaotic. What if you're growing this money for a retirement that is 15 years away, but you get horribly sick tomorrow? What if you need access to that capital long before you hit age 65?
This is where Stuart's materials pivot from merely surviving market volatility to surviving the brutal realities of life.
Right.
We need to transition our focus to the living benefits of the 7702 plan, which are governed by additional IRS codes, specifically 101A and 72E.
Because the chassis is technically a life insurance policy, the default assumption is that the only way to extract the big financial benefit is to die and leave a tax-free death benefit to your heirs.
Which is how traditional life insurance works.
But the materials emphasize that these living benefits fundamentally change the utility of the product. It is your money while you are alive.
Precisely. A properly structured index universal life policy includes riders that allow you to accelerate the death benefit if you suffer a chronic, critical, or terminal illness.
Okay, that's huge.
We're not just talking about estate planning. We're talking about a massive financial shield against a health shock that would otherwise bankrupt you.
Let's define the parameters of those triggers based on the sources.
Sure. Critical illnesses are sudden, severe medical events. The standard triggers are a major heart attack, a life-threatening stroke, an invasive cancer diagnosis, end-stage renal failure, or a major organ transplant.
Things that come out of nowhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Chronic illnesses are conditions where you lose the ability to care for yourself. The medical definition usually requires that you can no longer perform 2 of the 6 basic activities of daily living, eating, bathing, dressing, toileting, transferring, or continence without substantial assistance.
So this is the scenario where you require long-term care or a nursing facility. These are exactly the types of events that historically devastate middle-class families. Even if you have robust health insurance, the deductibles, the out-of-pocket maximums, the experimental treatments not covered by insurance, and most importantly, the lost wages from not being able to work. It drains your liquid savings in a matter of months.
But under the architecture of this strategy, if you suffer one of these qualifying events, the insurance company allows you to access a significant portion of your policy's death benefit in advance, completely tax-free.
This is a massive paradigm shift. Let's walk through the specific numerical illustration provided in Stuart's materials to crystallize how powerful this mechanism is.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's imagine a learner listening right now decides to commit to this strategy to close their income gap. They decide to contribute $500 a month into the policy. That is $6,000 a year.
That is a very realistic, disciplined savings rate for someone attempting to alter their financial trajectory.
They maintain that discipline for 20 years. Over 2 decades, their total out-of-pocket contribution is $120,000.
Okay.
Now, based on the historical, moderate compounding of an index strategy, utilizing that 0% floor and 12% cap we just analyzed, that $120,000 could realistically grow to an accumulated cash value of roughly $300,000 by the time they reach retirement age.
And because of IRS Code 72E, which dictates how money is distributed from life insurance, you don't simply withdraw the money and trigger a tax event.
Oh, how do you get it out?
You take loans against the cash value. The insurance company loans you the money using your policy as collateral, which means the distribution is completely tax-free.
Wait, really?
Yes. Under Stuart's modeling, many people can strategically take approximately 10% of that accumulated value annually as tax-free income.
So 10% of $300,000 is $30,000 a year, tax-free. That 30 grand is the missing wall.
That's it, exactly.
That is the exact capital that swoops in to close the original 35 to 40% income gap we discussed in Pillar 1. Your pension covers your base living expenses, and this tax-free income stream bridges the gap to keep your lifestyle intact.
While keeping you completely insulated from the IRS's tax hikes.
That is the primary retirement function. But let's layer the living benefits on top of that same scenario.
Okay.
Imagine 10 years into funding this plan. You're 50 years old, you've built up some cash value, but out of nowhere, you suffer a severe, debilitating stroke. You're hospitalized. You cannot work for 8 months. Your spouse has to take a leave of absence from their job just to manage your care and rehabilitation. The financial pressure is immense.
In the traditional Pillar 3 scenario, you are trapped in a bureaucratic nightmare.
Because of the 401k rules.
Right. If you try to pull money out of your 401k to save your house from foreclosure or pay the hospital, the IRS hits you with ordinary income tax on every dollar, PLUS, a 10% early withdrawal penalty, because you're under 59 and a half.
They are legally kicking you while you're bleeding.
But under the 70702 plan with living benefits, you submit your medical records to the insurance company, triggering the critical illness rider.
And then what?
They calculate a lump sum based on the severity of your stroke and the size of your death benefit, and they cut you a check. You can use those tax-free funds for absolutely anything.
Wow.
You pay the hospital bills, you wipe out your credit card debt, you pay your mortgage for the next year while you focus entirely on physical therapy and recovery.
You are utilizing the umbrella to stay dry during the absolute worst storm of your life. It fundamentally ceases to be just a retirement account waiting for a date on a calendar. It becomes a catastrophic life event contingency plan.
It creates instant financial breathing room exactly when you're at your most physically and emotionally vulnerable.
Okay, I have to stop us here. As a host, I have to channel the skepticism of the learner.
I was waiting for this.
We have just spent 30 minutes detailing a financial instrument that offers tax-free compounding, a 0% market floor that eliminates losses, a mathematical proof showing 63K outperforming 47K, tax-free access via loans, and essentially a massive influx of capital if you suffer a heart attack.
It sounds too good to be true.
It sounds entirely too good to be true. There has to be a catch. What is the catch?
That skepticism is not only healthy, it's mandatory when evaluating any financial strategy. A credible architect must be transparent about the structural trade-offs.
James Stuart is.
Yes, James Stuart's materials are highly upfront about this. He explicitly calls them the gotchas in his presentation.
I love that he leans into that word.
To maintain trust, we must outline exactly what rights and expectations you are surrendering to secure these massive benefits.
Let's lay them out meticulously. Gotcha number 1. Market returns.
We touched on this when explaining the mechanics of the 12% cap, but it needs to be stated as a permanent limitation.
Right.
The first gotcha is that you are permanently surrendering the possibility of extreme overnight astronomical gains.
So no crypto spikes.
Right. If your psychological profile requires the thrill of buying a speculative tech stock or a cryptocurrency and watching it explode 300% in a single year, this strategy will deeply frustrate you.
I am going to push back on behalf of the greedy investor. Why would I give up the chance to hit a home run?
Because home runs in the financial markets are statistically rare and usually accompanied by massive strikeout risks.
That's fair.
You are making a conscious trade. You are trading unlimited, volatile upside for absolute mathematical downside protection. You must accept the ceiling so that the institution can afford to buy you the floor.
You have to choose your priority.
You have to ask yourself what your true priority is. Is it maximizing the theoretical highest possible number on a spreadsheet, regardless of the risk of ruin? Or is it ensuring a consistent, mathematically sound, compounding trajectory that cannot be wiped out by a global pandemic, a banking crisis, or a housing collapse?
When you frame it as avoiding the strikeout, the cap makes sense. Gotcha number 2. The early years and liquidity.
This strategy is a long-term structural play. It is not a liquid checking account. In the first few years of funding an indexed universal life policy, you experience what is known as the J-curve.
What's the J-curve?
A significant portion of your initial contributions are not going directly to cash value. They are paying the internal costs of insurance, establishing the legal framework, and funding the massive death benefit that provides the living benefits we just discussed.
So practically speaking, if I contribute $6,000 in year 1, I can't just change my mind in year 2, close the account, and pull out my $6,000.
No, you can't.
The cash value takes time to build momentum.
Exactly. You must have the financial discipline and stability to leave those funds alone during the early years so the compounding engine can reach the critical mass necessary to operate efficiently.
Makes sense.
If you anticipate needing that capital tomorrow or next year, it belongs in the tax now bucket at your local bank, not inside a 7702 structure.
That requires real commitment. And we have gotcha number 3, keeping a small balance.
Even 20 or 30 years down the line, when the policy is fully funded and bursting with hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash value, you cannot drain the account to absolute zero.
Why not?
If you pull every single penny out via loans, the policy will lapse. The insurance contract collapses, the IRS umbrella folds up, and you instantly lose all the tax advantages, potentially triggering a massive tax bill on the gains you've borrowed.
Oh, wow. The IRS umbrella vanishes and you are standing naked in a tax storm.
Exactly. To prevent that, the structural requirement is that you must always leave a small cushion, roughly 10% of the cash value, inside the policy.
Okay.
This remaining capital keeps the internal engine functioning, paying the necessary monthly administrative and mortality costs to keep the legal structure alive until you eventually pass away, at which point the death benefit pays off the loans.
Okay, let's review the gotchas objectively. Your gains are capped at around 12%. You lack full liquidity in the first few years due to insurance costs, and you have to leave a 10% tip in the account forever to keep the lights on.
That's the summary.
Honestly, when you dig into the mechanics, those don't seem like malicious tricks or hidden keys. They're simply the physics of the product. You cannot build a floor without constructing a ceiling. You cannot have life insurance benefits without paying the cost of insurance.
That is the most accurate way to view it. These are the exact structural guardrails that allow the tax-free, loss-free compounding to mathematically function.
Right.
You have to put fuel in the engine if you expect it to drive you safely up the mountain.
So let's assume a learner has listened to this entire breakdown. They've looked at the math of the 1999 to 2025 graph. They understand the terrifying reality of the IRS controlling their future tax rates. They want the living benefits, and they accept the 3 gotchas. What is the physical next step? Because you can't just log on to a discount brokerage website, click add to cart, and buy an IUL, right?
No, you cannot. And this introduces the final and perhaps most crucial hurdle outlined in Stuart's materials, the velvet rope.
The velvet rope.
Unlike a traditional 401k, where the HR department essentially auto-enrolls anyone with a pulse on their first day of corporate orientation, the 7702 strategy requires a strict, selective approval process.
You actually have to prove you are worthy of the umbrella. Why?
Because of the massive transfer of risk. When you secure this insurance chassis, the institution is contractually agreeing to provide you with a 0% market floor.
And the living benefits.
And they are agreeing to potentially hand you hundreds of thousands of dollars in living benefits if you suffer a stroke or a heart attack. That is a colossal financial liability for them.
I can imagine.
To remain solvent, they must meticulously evaluate the risk profile of every single applicant.
Who are the institutions taking on this risk? If they are promising a 0% floor during the next Great Depression, I need to know they aren't some fly-by-night operation operating out of a strip mall.
Absolutely. The materials highlight that James Stuart specifically partners with top-tier, highly rated financial institutions. One prominent example mentioned in the sources is F&G.
F&G.
These are colossal entities with over a century of proven financial strength. They've survived the Great Depression, World War II, the dot-com bust, and the 2008 financial crisis.
That's a solid track record.
They are built to endure catastrophic macroeconomic events, but their longevity is entirely predicated on their strict, uncompromising underwriting and risk management.
Which means they're highly selective about who they let pass the velvet rope. So what does that qualification process actually look like for the learner? Is it a mountain of paperwork and blood tests?
The industry has modernized the process significantly. According to Stuart's process, it involves a streamlined application conducted over a secure Zoom call.
Oh, nice.
It generally takes about 5 to 10 minutes. The materials specifically note the use of Fidelity's safe firewall to ensure that all personal and financial data is completely encrypted and protected from interception during the screen sharing application.
Security is paramount. So you're on a secure, encrypted Zoom call. What exactly are they interrogating you about?
There are 3 primary components to the application. First, a targeted health questionnaire.
Okay, medical history.
Right, they need to establish a baseline of your current physical risk to determine if you qualify for the living benefits. Second, rigorous identity verification. You must provide your driver's license and social security number to satisfy federal anti-money laundering regulations.
Standard stuff.
And third, checking account validation.
Wait, checking account validation. Are they charging you a fee right then and there just to apply?
No, there's no application fee. But you have to prove you possess a valid, consistent funding source.
Oh, I see.
The institution will not issue a policy if they suspect it will lapse in 6 months due to lack of funds. You must demonstrate the actual financial capacity to fund the specific strategy you are applying for.
Okay, so you spend the 10 minutes, you answer the medical questions honestly, you provide your ID, and you validate your funding source. You submit the application. Are you legally locked in at that moment?
Absolutely not, and this is a vital point in the materials. Even if the institution reviews your file and grants you approval, there is zero legal or financial obligation for you to move forward. You are merely applying to see if you qualify.
You're just asking the bouncer if you're allowed into the club. You don't have to buy a drink.
Precisely. Once the approval comes back, Stuart schedules a final review call. You look at the actual approved mathematical illustrations based on your specific age, health, and funding capacity.
So you see the real numbers.
You review the exact cap rates and costs. If you are entirely comfortable with the architecture, you activate it. If you have any reservations whatsoever, you simply walk away, no strings attached, and the policy is never issued.
When you really analyze the velvet rope, the health questionnaire, the financial validation, the institutional underwriting, it might initially feel like an annoying barrier to entry.
It can feel that way.
But functionally, this exclusivity is a feature, not a bug. Because the institution relies on risk pooling to guarantee your market floor and fund your living benefits, they must ensure they are building a stable, viable pool of candidates.
Right.
The strictness of the entry process is the very mechanism that guarantees the safety and solvency of your money once it's inside the umbrella.
It is the ultimate real-world validation that the math is legitimate. If it were a scam or mathematically unsound, they would throw the doors wide open and let absolutely everyone in to harvest the premiums.
They take anyone's money.
The fact that they reject people proves they are carefully managing the risk.
This has been an incredibly dense, illuminating journey through James Stuart's materials. To synthesize everything we've covered, let's look at how the sources summarize the ultimate value proposition. Stuart uses a heuristic called the five-finger money question checklist.
It's an excellent framework for auditing your current financial trajectory. Ask yourself these 5 questions about where your money is currently sitting.
Number 1.
Number 1, does your money grow completely tax-free? Number 2, does it legally avoid all market losses with a 0% floor?
Huge one.
Number 3, does it produce strong, long-term compounding growth by capturing market upside? Number 4, can you access your capital tax and penalty-free at any age?
No 59.5 rule.
And number 5, does it provide massive tax-free living benefits if your health catastrophically fails?
If you look at the traditional default settings, your local savings account, your mutual funds, your 401k, your IRA, they might give you 1 or 2 of those fingers.
Perhaps.
If you have a Roth IRA, maybe you get 3. But the mathematical reality of the 7702 index strategy is that it's architecturally designed to deliver all 5.
And that is the ultimate mission of this analysis. We are not here to sell a specific product. We are here to provide you, the learner, with the deep structural and mathematical understanding of how the tax code and the financial markets actually operate.
Knowledge is power.
The goal is to empower you to look at that 35 to 40% retirement income gap and realize you have architectural alternatives to close it.
You do not have to blindly accept the default settings handed down by corporate HR departments. You do not have to accept the terrifying risk of a 25% IRS penalty or the devastation of a 38% market crash as simply the cost of doing business in retirement.
There are better options.
There are better ways to build the wall. Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to chew on as you process all this data.
We spend our entire adult working lives consumed by financial stress, agonizing over whether our nest egg is going to survive the violent, unpredictable swings of the global stock market.
But when you truly analyze the power of living benefits, and you look at how aggressively the IRS plans to tax traditional retirement accounts, you have to ask yourself a much deeper, more personal question.
What's the real risk?
What if the biggest risk to your retirement isn't the stock market crashing? What if the absolute biggest risk is you surviving a major catastrophic health event, only to realize that the IRS and market volatility are literally standing between you and the very money you sacrificed your whole life to save for your own recovery?
It is a profoundly sobering thought, but recognizing the true nature of the threat is the essential first step to building the right umbrella.
Remember the math of the two climbers. You don't always have to climb higher or take more risks to win the game. Sometimes you just need a strategy that structurally refuses to let you fall. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into James Stuart strategies. Keep questioning the financial defaults you've been handed. Keep looking for the missing walls in your financial house, and we will see you next time.